Karen Virtual, Creative Katie here. Welcome to my channel, Mixed Media Creations. This is a video in the Build Your Stash series, a series where I show you inexpensive and rather quick ways that you can build up your mixed media art journal stash so you have supplies and materials at the ready that you can use to create. Welcome back to my subscribers, and if you're not a subscriber, take the time to hit the subscribe button on the right hand corner. If you want to support my channel, links to my Amazon influencer store and a donation link can be found in the description box below. Today's Build Your Stash, prepping ATCs and ICADs and other substrates that you can have ready at hand.
Today we are going to build our stash in a couple different ways, related ways, using things that would otherwise end up in the recycling bin. Now, one of the things that we're going to use are the kind of tag board stuff that you find in a lot of the packaging of the products that we are buying to create. These are from stencils, and you know, it's a great weight of material, and I find it stands up. The backings of paper pads, mixed media pads, works for that. Old file folders. This is from a canvas pack, so we have that. What else you can use is some of the advertising that comes to your door or that you get in your mailbox. It's in this tag board. Stickers have, you know, smaller ones, but still that. These get left on our door pretty much every week, and they're perfect weight for this. The other thing that I find works really well for this is some of the travel brochures or travel, you know, they're advertising, and you walk into the travel bureau of the town that you're visiting, and they have all of these displayed, you know, for you, where you can go, and they're in that thick material. Now, what you can do is take these and cut them down. And the smaller ones here, I probably would cut them down first. You know, the ATC is 2.5 by 3.5, an ICAD 4 by 6 or 5 by 3. These ones, you know, I might use this template. I could also cut tags. You know, once you have the various size shapes of tags, you can just simply, you know, cut them out on there, and you have a very inexpensive way of creating a substrate that you can use. Another size that I would like, and actually I can see myself using this because it is exactly where it needs to be. I like this 4 by 4. I've been doing a lot of these little mini canvases, and so that are this size, and I have these coasters, so I'm just, you know, going to cut that, and then you have a substrate. You can cut in circles if you want to make the ATC coins that have been popular. But I'm not going to cut today. You don't need to sit on TV or sit here and watch me cut. Okay, so we are going to go one step further, and it's actually save some time, and what you're going to end up with is whatever size you want, whether it's the 4 by 4 or an ATC size or an ICAD size or a tag size, you're going to be able to cut it, and it will be a fairly complete background. So for that, I like using the bigger sheets that I have. Now, if it's black on one side, I typically use that as the back side. Here, I've been using this to make some of my templates and I'll put a link to the video where I talk about templates. But again, I'm repurposing my materials. So inevitably one side is, you know, typically it's clear, and the other side has print on it. So what I typically do is put a coat of gesso on the side that has the printing on it. I want to block that out, and if some peeks through, I'm okay with that because it typically adds. This gives me a nice background to my ATC or ICAD or whatever shape I'm doing. So first step, we are going to simply put a coat of gesso. Now you can use white gesso, or you can, I have some gold gesso here. I also have my black gesso. I'm not so sure I'd put a lot of, use a lot of the gold gesso, but maybe I'm gonna do some. But I definitely would do some in black. You can always change your mind, and the idea again is to have your stash. So if paint starting with a black surface is not something you ever do, don't paint it black. Okay, now the reason I'm going with gesso on here is because this does have a bit of a shiny surface, and I just want to hedge my bets and make sure that everything is going to be well covered. So I'm just going to put a coat of this on here and let it dry. And while I'm doing this, I may do several of them. People ask, is gesso necessary? To me, it is. To me, I use my gesso. You don't have to necessarily. I don't buy the big brand. I don't buy professional grade gesso. I buy economy stuff at the craft store or the art store. I hear that the De La Rowney brand is a good basic one. It's very smooth. But what the gesso does, it's going to protect the surface. It's going to make sure that what you're putting on is going to stick and, you know, give a good surface for you to do all the other stuff. It also will prevent all the moisture from going in. So because with mixed media, we tend to add a lot of stuff on top. So I'm just gonna do this one. Now, when the times that I do my build a stash, if I need a whole bunch of stuff, if I know I'm going to need something, I might do a build your stash session. But the other time that I'm doing it, which is what I'm doing today, is a time when I want to create, but for whatever reason, it's just not going well. The ideas aren't there. And so, but I want to be in my studio, and sometimes going through the motion of doing this, which is rather mindless, gets the creative juices flowing. And sometimes ideas come to me while I'm doing, building my stash and doing these kind of things, whether it's cutting the ICADs or ATCs or whatever. So what I grabbed here, this is the container that I throw little bits and bobs, when I've used a coffee filter, and this is the little bits that's left. I never throw anything away. So what I'm going to do is use that. So I've got some doilies in here. I've got the ends of like paper pads for some texture. I've got, little pieces of music sheet. As well, I have, it's not a partial thing, but this was in a hotel room they had where the coffee cups were, and so I just took them and stuff. So we're going to put that on there. So I'm just going to kind of sort these out by kind of color a little bit here, because we're going to empty this out, and I kind of, you know, so I'm just going to do that just so I see what I have. Got parts of the map here that I use. Got all this dictionary paper from when I made my Julie Nutting dolls.
It looks like I'm going to do a warm colored sheet and a cool color. So I'm just ripping them into different shapes and sizes. And you know, while I'm using little leftover pieces, if I was doing this deliberately and just picking out colored sheets, I would want variety in the weight of the paper. So that just makes for more interesting texture in the underlayers. I'm using Mod Podge to glue this down. It's the matte finish, but you can use gel medium, you can use clear gesso, you can use regular gesso, which will kind of whitewash it down a little bit. It's really up to you. All of those will make these things adhere to the background paper. As an aside, you can also take these little bits and have a gessoed sheet ready to go and glue them as you're creating. So every time you have a little leftover piece, you can put it on there. So once these are all glued down, now I'm just doing some stamping, and I'm using archival ink because I don't want this to run. I want it to be permanent. Here's the other one that I created in the cool tones. I cut that footage in there, but you will see both of them when I'm adding color to it and doing the next layer. I'm using shelf liner. I'm using some texture stamps. I'm using a variety of things. Here I'm using some gesso, watered down gesso, just to push back some of these colors, just that little bit, because I don't want this in your face. Now I want to add some texture, but I don't want to use texture paste because I'm going to have to cut this. My goal is to use this to cut into ATCs or 4x4s or 5x7s. So I'm using gesso, and this gesso is just the store brand. It's an economy line, and I'm just putting it through this ripple stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. And it won't be as thick as texture paste. So I'm pulling the colors that I want to use in this warm colored one, and I have deep violet, magenta, Naples yellow, and copper. So to apply, I'm just using my palette knife, and I'm just kind of pushing it through, and I'm going both ways. Now when you're creating this sheet that's going to be cut up, it kind of frees your mind. I want color, I want texture in all the parts. Then I take the brayer and I brayer over this. And, I keep going. I'm adding more layers, stenciling through different stencils, just grabbing what comes to mind. And if you're thinking right now, oh my goodness, that is hideous, it's kind of what I was thinking too. And I just keep going. Everything you do will have an ugly stage. And this one definitely did. There I'm stenciling through a plastic paper plate holder. So yeah, I definitely, I go and I go and I go. I'm scribbling with the fine liner bottle. Anything that you want, you can add to this sheet. Because once you cut it into the smaller pieces, it really will take on a different life. So I really didn't like this, so I decide I'm going to color block. So I get out the Naples yellow, and instantaneously when I start doing that, I don't know, something clicked in my brain. I'm coming back in, I'm putting some white, I'm putting some magenta in here, and it really changed this. I call this color blocking, and it softened it, but you can still see all the stamping. You can still feel the texture from all those collage papers that I put down. And remember, those sheets were kind of throwaway pieces, so they're just adding that little bit. So I get out the ripple stencil here. I'm just stenciling through a little bit. I like using the same stencil, using different colors through it. This is Onion Blossoms, which I haven't really used, but oh my, I absolutely will now because I loved the interest that it added to this background. And at this point, I'm just really one very happy camper. So I'm doing some script stamp on here in gold. Then I grabbed the big wreath stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, and links to these products and stencils will be in the description box below. Thank you for shopping through my Amazon links. And I hemmed and I hawed, but my instinct was saying add a little black, so I did it, and I actually liked it. I liked it before, and I liked it after. And I'm going all over the place because when I cut it, and I don't know what size and shapes I'm going, I want to have that little bit of black and a little bit of interest in the background. And then I'm splattering with some bronze paint. So now I have the cool tone one here, and I've used some of the same stencils and stamps, and now I'm putting on paint in a different way. This I'm really watering down, and that's going to give more of a watery color look, and more of the collage items are going to show. So 2 different ways of applying paint. And here I'm just kind of dripping it and letting it flow. Remember, I put the gesso through the stencil here, and so what will happen is the paint is going to catch in the nooks and the crannies of that, anything that's texturized on here. And I'm drying this as I go. So on my one hand, I'm applying the watery paint, and then the other hand, I'm applying the heat to drying. So now I'm adding some green onto here. Now I'm using colors on the warm one and here. I'm using colors that play well together. They're nagless colors. If you look, there will be 5 colors that will be sitting next to each other on the color wheel. And typically if you stick to those when you're applying wet paint, they will not make mud for you. So it's a quick, easy way. So if you don't have a color wheel, get one. Like, I find it so very, very useful. This is the tiny dots or tiny circle stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, just adding a little bit more. And I'm adding the colors that are in the background, and then always black and white, and usually some metallic. Now I'm stamping with shelf liner with acrylic paint. Sometimes I don't use archival ink. I go straight to the ink. Here's a homemade stamp that I have. And my stamps. So I have 2 background sheets that I absolutely love. Now my intention is to cut this apart and use it that way. But I can use it as a whole sheet, and I can just store it in my stash as the whole sheet, or I can continue and cut this up as I go. Now I have some ATCs and tags that I have here, and I'm just laying it out to see how I can maximize using this background paper. So I can do a combination of different sizes, or I could do just all ATCs, you know, and I lay out what I have in ATCs to get the maximum out of it. Now I can also use these templates, windows, and if I want to kind of cherry pick the best composition, I can just put this on here and see what I like, and I may just, you know, like a certain area and decide, you know, instead of getting the most out of this, I really want to get the best of it. I can scan this and then print it out onto mixed media paper and use it as a background as well. Make sure you dry this paper because it will not cut easily if it's very damp. So let it dry overnight. So the blue one's still really wet. So I'm going to cut this one. And as you can see, It's too thick to be really cutting with the paper cutter. So I am going to cut 3 of these 4x4s, and this is a coaster that I'm using as a template here, and I'm rounding the circles, rounding the edges. I really love that. And then I'm going to make 2 5x7s that I'm going to create on this as a background, and then I can frame this into a 5x7 frame with or without mat. But you get to choose what you're going to do with yours. The nice part is you have these in your stash, you can pull them out, and most of the work is done. Now I just need to figure out a focal point, and I'm over on the side. You can see I have a butterfly. I'm playing with the idea of having that butterfly be one of the focal images on one of the 5x7s. But for what I do with it, I guess that might show up on another video. I'm not sure. If not, I will post it on my Instagram account. Check me out, Creative Katie on Instagram. Bye for now.